please welcome Mr. Gary Puckett.
That would have been an entrance.
Yeah.
I almost tripped. It was my tribute to Biden.
Dun-dun-dun-dun. All right, on the count of 3, we're going to start the TV show and get this thing rolling. Here we go. 1, 2. Woo! They love you. They really love you.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Good afternoon, my friends and family. Thank you so much for joining us once again for All Access Pass. I'm your cruise host, Jason, and today I'm sitting with another absolute legend. I'm a broken record with this because I'm just so blessed, and there are only so many superlatives that you can layer on the folks that we get up here. Do me a favor, a huge round of applause for the fabulous Gary Puckett. So you and your absolutely fabulously lovely wife are just fantastic to have on board with us every single time. I'm so grateful to you being here. And also, your wife is stunning, which makes you another member, like myself, of the I Married Out of My League club. Yeah. I'm familiar with this club. I'm in it, too. Yeah.
Lori just commented on how beautiful Brittany
exactly,
is. So
exactly.
Yes.
We're lucky men, to say the least.
Yes, we are.
And right before we walked out, and I did not know this, but I find this to be one of the most precious things. Lori looked at Gary and she said, "Hey, break a face." And I said, I heard it and I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "You mean break a leg?" She goes, "No, break a face." Explain that to people for me.
Well, when we have 4 grandchildren, Brandon is the oldest at 10 years old, and when he was the only grandchild at 3, when he's learning to speak and his speech is forming and all that, we were doing our first concert that he was attending. Well, at least the one he remembers. And it was at the Tampa State Fair. And the girls, our daughters, were standing backstage with my wife and the grandchild. And they were saying, "Break a leg." And Brandon thought that they said, "Break a face." So since 7 years ago, it's been break a face to everybody on the Happy Together tour, in our group, and so forth and so forth. So break a face whenever you're...
I think my favorite part of that is it's the rest of the Happy Together tour says it now, too. It's not not just one rock star, but all of them say, break a face.
Yes, they do. In fact, a couple of the members of the Happy Together band said, "We took that home with us to New York and New Jersey, and we credit you for break a face."
Well, you mean you credit your grandchild for break a face. So let's go back a few years. Let's start with a little bit of history for folks, and then we'll jump into some audience questions, if you'd be so kind. You come from a musical family.
I do.
And you started off about 6 years old, correct?
Yes.
And you started off on piano, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about how you get into the piano, how your musical family / you will take some piano lessons.
Yeah, that's good. My parents met in high school, right out of high school. They were in a big band called the Dick Halverson Big Band, and my mother played piano. She was a very talented and accomplished pianist, and my dad played saxophone. So they were in that band, and they met, and once face to face, they were attracted and ultimately married. And they probably would have chosen to go on and have a musical life as such, but it was an era where the tour buses were not what tour buses are today. Today you have bedrooms and you have trash mashers and you have bathrooms and microwaves and all the things, all the comforts of home.
A home away from home in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So they opted for a normal life, and my dad went into merchandising and made his way up the corporate ladder. But meanwhile, as the family grew, Mom always had a piano in the house, so there was always music every day. She was addicted to music. She had to play, and a couple of hours every day she would play, and then she acquired one of those Kimball-type organs, the ones with the pedals and all that. And she was very proficient at this and would play at church and functions and things like that. And my dad would drag out the sax every once in a while. And so at 6 years old, my parents sat me down at the piano and they said, "You will take piano lessons." Okay, so I tried to be a good student, but I think that when parents try to teach their kids, it doesn't always turn out so great. You kind of need somebody that's an objective viewpoint, to direct your child and all that. But I continued with piano for a while, and it was educational, but it wasn't thrilling to me. I do remember, though, one time when I was 14, I think, I got into a musical talent contest.
Yes.
And it was on television, it was right around the time that Jerry Lee Lewis was popular, and of course I was a big fan. You see, I didn't know that I was really a ballad singer. I always thought I was going to be a rock and roller, that I was going to be Jimi Hendrix, that I was going to be Randy Bachman, or, But that wasn't the case, and, finally, after 80 years, I've recognized the fact that I'm supposed to sing, not shout. So, anyway, I'm getting off track, but I recall that evening after we performed, and a week later they said, we're going to announce the winner tonight, and the man said very confidently, "And the winner is Gary Puckett." "Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, that's incorrect." And he gave the first place to the violin player. I was so disappointed. But that was around the time that I found an acoustic guitar in my grandparents' attic. They lived in a little town called Pelican Rapids in Minnesota. And my grandfather, he was everything to the town. He was the cop, he was the beekeeper, he had a barber shop, an ice cream shop. He lived there for 89 years. So, and it was only a small town, 1,400 people. They didn't even have a stoplight for a while. So, anyway, what am I saying now? I'm getting a little bit lost.
You found the guitar in the attic.
I found this guitar
in the attic,
and it kind of turned me on.
Yeah.
This is romantic to me. This is cool.
To hell with the piano.
Yeah, sort of. But I just thought guitar. It was an old Spanish style, and it only had 5 strings, but it wasn't too hard to plunk out da 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 da, the old honky tonk routine, So anyway, that's what really started me off on the musical path that I really loved. So I was a big fan of people like Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, the Everly Brothers, Little Richard, Fats Domino, and groups before that were a part of the R&B era. So go ahead. You were going to ask me.
Well, no, I was going to say you were kind of between eras too. I mean, plus your parents being in the big band, and then you kind of touching your toe into rock and roll. That's an interesting crossover for you as a young musical student and as someone who's hungry. How do you figure out what your path is with two multiple different streams?
In my view, only by experience. And I grew up I was born in 42, October of 42. So
people are doing the math right now. You know that, right?
Yeah. I'll be 82 next October. Thank you. So I really kind of grew up through the 50s, that's when your brain is starting to come alive at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, so I was really aware of the musical scene then. I didn't know much about politics, didn't care much about politics. I just wanted to be a kid, ride my bike, learn to play the guitar, rock and roll with everybody. Get a car at 16 years old, which is another story. So that's really kind of what defined what was going to happen as I went on. My parents wanted me to become something better than a musician. I'm sorry to say it that way, but
no,
they were musicians.
I think that's most parents, to be honest. Yeah, it's tough to see the future.
They just didn't think that I could really succeed at being a musician. And honestly, I didn't know if I could do it. And,
Sure.
and I went to college for 2 years, studied psychology and things of that nature, because I thought if I'm going to do this in the real world, I want to do something that's kind of interesting to me. And I studied for 2 years, and it just was, I was being pulled in the other direction. Yeah. I was in small groups. I was playing in boys' clubs, and I was playing in,
the Redcoats.
Yeah, the Redcoats. That goes back to me 15 years old in high school.
First band, the Redcoats.
We wore red coats. Yeah. We were called the Redcoats. And, that's what was exciting to me, and I wanted to do that, So that's the direction I was being pulled in. And I think God directed the whole thing all the time. I didn't know that. I thought I was, the brilliant one or whatever. And learned later on that it was divinely guided. And he said, go over here. Okay, go over there. Well, maybe you should go over there, And that's what happened for me up to that point. And I quit school, and I went to work in a little place called Foreign Auto Supply. Now, this is 1962. 3. How many foreign cars did we have in America?
There's one.
Yeah. We had Volkswagen and a few others. But I found myself working for these 2 guys, great guys. They were both 33 years old. They had a secretary, and they had $50,000 worth of auto parts. And it was a little tiny store. They said, you have opportunity here. And I said, okay. So
okay.
There were 2 delivery boys, me and Phil Polando, and Ed and John, the owners, and the secretary, whose name is escaping me right. Well, anyway.
You'll get there.
So there came a point when I said, I got to stop delivering. I got to get on the counter. I got to pick up that phone and talk to these people, that are out there buying these auto parts and fixing these cars. So one day I picked up the phone, and it was, hi, Gary, it's Hans from Hans Auto Parts. I said, Hans, what can I do for you? He said, I'd like to have a water pump for a 1957 Volkswagen. I said, okay. And I looked and I looked and I looked. And for any of you who don't know, Volkswagens are air-cooled. So I searched and searched and searched until finally I had to go to the bosses and say, Hans wants a water pump for a 1957. And they both looked at each other and broke up. So that was the beginning of me thinking, maybe this isn't for me.
Almost the same thing happened to me when I very first started in entertainment. Not to hijack the interview, but I was on a cruise ship. I just started on a cruise ship. This is a long, long time ago. And I had the captain. They used to play pranks on you back in the day. And the captain called down. It was my first day, and he's Dutch. And you send him to the room. Tell him I need a long stand and a wait. Delivered immediately. Wait at the door. So I went and stood at this door, waiting for a long stand and a wait. You get it? I stood there for an hour, waiting for a long stand and a wait. And he walked by and he said, good, that's a long stand and a wait. You can go now. Same thing. I was like, all right, I'm done with this. There will be no more of this in my future. So let's fast forward a little bit. There's the Outcasts, and then the Outcasts and you kind of develop and you figure out there's going to be Gary Puckett and the Union Gap.
Well, the Outcasts were a great band. We were a trio.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we came together really well as a drummer, bass player, guitar player. I also had a B3 organ on stage. And we did all the dance music of the day, 1965, 66. We were playing the Beatles and the Stones and all the Stax group, people like Walking the Dog, that kind of stuff. And one day I just said, I really have to move on. So the bass player and the drummer were always at odds.
They bickered.
They were just volatile. They both wanted to lead. They both wanted to call the songs. And there came a point where I said, guys, if we don't enjoy this. And in 1966, we each were making $350 a week. That was a lot in 1966. You know what I mean? We could afford houses and cars and things, and they were always fighting over who's going to call the songs. And I said, guys, if this doesn't stop, I'm moving on. It didn't stop. I moved on. Looked around San Diego for 4 months until I felt that I found the guys that could do this or wanted to do this. And it was Kerry Chater, who ended up being the bass player, but he was extremely talented, played keyboards, guitar, was a songwriter. His partner in songwriting was Gary Puckett, who played saxophone.
Oh, use mine.
Played keyboards, and one of the guys from the Outcasts decided that he would stay with us. So anyway, the group kind of formed. Can you hear me out there still? Sounds different up here to me. So we started rehearsing in my garage in January 1967, and you know, that was what we did in those days. We were a garage band, you know, basically, and we learned enough material to go back to work in the nightclubs because a couple of the guys were married, and we needed to make a living and all the things that life presents, you know. So with that, I decided, okay, I'm going to go to Los Angeles and find an agent, somebody that'll book us out on the road. That was one of the dumbest things I ever thought of, but I think it led me to what it was supposed to become, because this agent came down. He looked at us in this club that was down in National City, which is where the Navy Yards are, and it was a really old, funky club with a very old, funky Chinese restaurant in the back of it, and we worked there for this guy, Harold, and he listened to the band, and he said, well, you guys aren't too good, but I'll see if I can get you a job. So he did. First, he sent us to Van Nuys, California, which is somebody from Van Nuys here, a little club called Cappy's. And it was about as wide as this stage and had a fish tank in it that went the length of the building. And there was an arowana fish.
Oh.
You ever see an arowana fish?
Yes.
It's an eel, basically. Like this, you know, and it swims, and, you know, it'd go back and forth and back and forth. And it was kind of the mantra for us, because nobody came in the club, and we got fired after 3 days because he wanted a trio, not 5 pieces. So then we went to Seattle, and I had grown up basically in Washington State, and I thought, well, this could be cool. Well, it was February. It was cold as the dickens, rainy, and we were all staying in this 2-room place. And I remember, you know, having to sleep in the same bed with a guy, and you'd go to bed like this, you know, over the side of hang on to the bottom of the.
Please don't roll over. Please don't roll over. Please don't roll over.
Yes, right. And so we kept our, you know, anything perishable that we ate, we kept on the windowsill because it was cold. It was winter. So anyway, I'm thinking to myself, how are we going to transcend the experience that we're in to the experience that I envisioned or was hoping for? And one day, it occurred to me that I had this interest in the Civil War, which I always had and still do to this day. I don't study it like in fact, I was made aware of a question here. And I said, guys, I got it. It was like truly that light bulb just went click. It went shining on me. You know, and I went, fellas, I got it. We're not going to wear the same thing that everybody's wearing out there on the streets. Remember, we were wearing tie-dye. The 60s are here tonight. We were wearing tie-dyes and bell-bottoms and platform shoes and hip huggers and fringes and leathers and, you know, all that stuff that we all wore. And that's when holy jeans started coming in, you know, ripped up, tear, and all that kind of stuff. And I said, fellas, we're going to dress in Union soldier outfits, because we can look the same but be different. We can have hash marks and different hats, and we will have a costume.
Do you remember the look on their faces when you were proposing this?
They hated it.
Yeah, okay.
They said, that's the dumbest thing we ever heard. I said, okay, well, follow me or not, but that's what we're going to do. So we went from Seattle to a club called the Long Branch Saloon in Portland, Oregon.
Down in Portland.
The Long Branch was a long club. On this end was the dance. On this end was the topless. Fortunately, we were away from the topless, so we got through that one. Went to Vallejo, California, and that was another topless club. I didn't know it. Yeah. We go in, we get dressed, we come out on stage, we're playing our first show and having a rockin' time. Second set, we come out, and two girls come out, one on each dance platform, whip off their shirts and start dancing.
How did they dance? How did that go?
Yeah. Do you know how hard it is for a 24-year-old to keep his eyes to the front when there's naked women on both sides? We had a good laugh over that, but from there we went to Los Angeles, and I took the boys and I went to a place called Western Costume, which is where all the movie producers go if they want to do a war movie, an Indian movie, a whatever movie. That's where they go to get the crowd costumes and all that. And I said, I'd like to buy these outfits for the band. They said, okay. And I remember the amount was astronomical. We didn't have the money between us for one outfit. So I said, can I rent one? Yeah. Can I rent one? Yes, you can. So I rented an outfit, took the boys, and went to Tijuana, Mexico. And that was where, in those days, you could get really great upholstery and really great tailoring. And everything else, you just stayed away from. You know? So the tailor that I found made our first outfits. We completed them up at home in San Diego. And from there, put together a portfolio that had lyrics of songs that I'd written. It had a demo of a band I'd been in prior to this, but it was me singing, and went to the record companies. We'd go to the Quad Room at night and work. Next morning I'd get up at 6. We'd drive to Los Angeles, go to the record companies. At the end of the day, we'd drive back, get an hour of sleep, go to work in the nightclub. And this went on for, I don't know, quite a while, weeks, until I walked into CBS Records, or CBS, it was Columbia Records, but CBS Corporation. And the lady at the phones was doing that Lily Tomlin thing, if you remember it. You remember Lily Tomlin? One ringy-dingy, you know. She'd plug the phone and all that. And that was what the phone systems were in those days. So I said, ma'am, you wouldn't want to hear a new group, would you? Because I was tired and frustrated and, you know, just at a point of collapse almost, you know. It's like, I want to go home. I want to lay down. I want to go to sleep. I want to eat. I want to forget about this for a while and then come back. So she said, oh, wait a minute. She said, go down that hallway over there, turn right at the end, go to the second doorway, and you'll meet a guy by the name of Jerry Fuller. Okay. I went to the front door, and I had told the guys to just stop. It was Sunset Boulevard, and you can't stop on Sunset Boulevard. I said, go around the block if you have to. And I said, guys, I'll be right out. Don't, you know, around. So I go to the door. I look in. He's pounding a nail in the wall. I said, what are you doing? He says, oh, hey, come on in. So I went in and said, what is that? He said, it's a gold record. I said, can I see that up close? I've never seen one of those before, you know. So I was very impressed. He said, this is a song that I wrote for Sam Cooke. But Sam didn't want it. Ricky Nelson did. So he recorded it. And I remember, a lot of you probably did the same thing. I would wait for the end of the Ricky Nelson, not the Ricky Nelson, what did they call it? The Nelsons.
Ozzy.
Yeah, Ozzy and Harriet. I would wait for the end, just for that 4 minutes worth of Ricky and his band and all that kind of stuff. And he said, Sam didn't want the song. Ricky wanted it. It sold 4 million copies. I had my portfolio in my hand. I said, would you please look at my portfolio? I thought I saw opportunity in there somewhere. He did. He liked it. He said, I'll come down and see the band. I got to tell you a little story before that. After our outfits were made, all the guys said, we're not walking into a bowling alley in these outfits.
We're going to get beat up.
You had to go into the bowling alley, 52 lanes, in order to get into the front door of the club. So I said, okay, you guys, everybody come to my house. We'll all go together. So they came over to my house at the proper hour, and we all drove over to the club. walked into the bowling alley, and it was rather funny as the lanes stopped, 2-4 at a time. Hey, look, what's this, And at first it was a little embarrassing, but people immediately took to it because it was like, have you ever seen the blackboard where it's all just marked up and it's just chaotic? But somebody puts lines on it that are all ordered, it makes sense. Well, we were ordered on stage, and by that point, we were a pretty good band. So people fell into it, and we became the #1 band in San Diego and the #1 club because the owner, Yale Khan was his name. He thought that he had put us together. Yeah. And he said, you boys are going to come work in my club, and you can be there as long as you want, and I'm going to pay you good and all that. So anyway, that's what happened. Jerry came in to the club on Friday instead of the Saturday that he said he was coming. And at the midnight break, he's standing there looking up at me, and I looked down and went, wait a minute, you're supposed to be here tomorrow. And he said, thought I'd catch you off guard. I said, you did? He said, what do you say we go make a record? And that was like, wow. So we sat in the booth, in the bowling alley there, and talked about it. He said, I'll be back with contracts. When he came back, we sat in the same booth and signed contracts.
And there it is.
To record.
And there it is. This is not going to come across the way it's intended, which is sincerely, but your memory for this is astronomical, considering that it was not yesterday. That's unbelievable. He's like, it was a Thursday. He was wearing brown pants. I'm going to jump into some guest questions because I'm afraid we're not going to get to any of them. Chris comes to us from New Jersey. Currently, how do you prepare for a show?
I want to make sure that I'm vocally sound, and I'm not always, and I'm my own worst critic. And
but you are renowned for in the good old days for many, many moons. You didn't even have to warm up back in the day, so that's a.
I could take a hour nap and get up 30 minutes before the show and be in wonderful voice. It didn't matter. God gave it to me, and I was using it. Came a point when I had to really start warming up. So I've seen a couple of vocal coaches over the years that have given me some secrets, sure, to properly warming up. It's like when you start up a Ferrari, you don't just stand on it and go 140 miles an hour. You just, you rev it up a little bit.
Yeah, most of us do that when we start our Ferraris at home. So, I mean, I know mine. I'm sure yours as well. Relatable.
Well, that's, so I have vocal exercises that I do, and they're rather silly, but they help me to open up.
Do you get nerves still before you perform?
Only if I'm unprepared. If
Sure.
I am prepared for a show, I'm ready to jump out there because I love the fans, and I have found over the years that they love me too, so it's always a... It's always a pleasure to get out there with you guys, and you sing along and you make me feel like on top of a cloud.
That's amazing. Terry comes to us from New York, or Florida, via New York, like most of Florida. Anybody actually born in Florida? I didn't know if you were allowed. Hey, 2 of you. Look, there's 4 people born in Florida. How many people live in Florida? How many? Yeah, see, that's my point. There's my point.
Our daughters and our grandkids are all native Floridians.
Made Floridians. That's good. They're the 4. Terry says, you tell such interesting stories. Have you ever considered writing a memoir?
Oh, yes, I have considered it. I keep running away from it. I don't know why. Maybe one day somebody will give me the answer, but I have a couple of people that approach me constantly and go, I can see those books flying off the shelf, And I always go, I don't know if I can remember everything about my life, I'm getting old and forgetful, Maybe it will just take somebody who has that probing mind, who can reach into this head, and find things that are going on in there.
You remember more at 82 than most people do at 28. So let's not, don't let that be a deterrent.
Thank you, Jason.
Alice says, no question, just wanted to let you know how much we love your salute to the military, and we hope you're feeling your best.
Thank you, Alice. It's wonderful for you to say so. I appreciate that.
Eddie from Long Island, did Ed Sullivan ever mispronounce your name? That could have been a big-time no-no for the censors.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine being in high school with the name Puckett?
Nope.
It was. Sometimes I say I'm not out of 11th grade yet when I hear the comments, but I understand, though, we weren't privy to Mr. Sullivan prior to the show because he was known for being an alcoholic. He was known for drinking. And they had to keep him on a track, so that he would go out there and do his job properly.
Yeah.
But I understand that they really coached him. Sir, it's Gary Puckett. Gary Puckett and the Union Gap, And I just love the way that he says Gary Puckett and the Union Gap.
Yeah, my Union Gap. Side note, as you hear these microphones kind of bouncing around, it has nothing to do with our wonderful technical team. When you're docked, and Gary will understand this intimately, using wireless microphones in a city, there are about 1 billion wireless channels floating around here. And so that's what's cutting in and out a little bit. It has nothing to do with the technical team up here. Carla and Myron from Olympia, Washington. Could you confirm or help us understand? We are under the impression that your name of your band is after the town of Union Gap, Washington. True?
Right on.
There it is.
That's correct. So the reason for that was that when I thought of the outfits, I went Union Soldier, Union Gap. It just came all at once, and I said, okay, well, that makes sense. And once again, the guys thought it was stupid, but it worked.
What do they know?
Pardon?
What do they know? Yeah.
And the record company, they deemed, if that's the correct word, to release our first record as the Union Gap, featuring Gary Puckett, because they said it didn't sound like a band; it sounded like an orchestrated recording with a singer, So, and by a young girl, which was the second record, they put my name in front of it, and thankfully, thank you very much.
Yes. Robin from Illinois, please say it ain't so, but obviously there will be a time where you retire. Please say it's not soon. We love you. You're our favorite. Keep going, keep going, keep going.
All I can say is it lifts my spirits to hear that. I really do appreciate it because I really don't want to quit. I kind of figure that it's going to be according to the man upstairs who will say at some point, it's time for you to just stay home with your grandkids or something. I don't know. But I intend to continue until the day I die. So thank you.
I like it. Sandy and Larry from West Virginia. Can you elaborate on Flash Phelps' phone call to wish your wife happy birthday?
Well, Flash and I have never been face-to-face, but we have been on the phone so many times, and he's such an interesting and fun guy.
Very.
And he plays my recordings, as do the other DJs, if you want to call them that, on Sirius. And he calls me every once in a while, and I call him every once in a while. And he knew that it was my wife's birthday. Just happened I was taking a shower, and I got out of the shower. I'm still soaking wet, and the phone is on the counter. And I hear it go, and I look over, and I see Flash Phelps. Well, I got to answer Flash. I can't let that go. So I said, Flash, hey, what's happening? He says, just wanted to be able to wish your wife a happy birthday. And I said, well, wait a minute. I'm just getting out of the shower. So, he says, you're in your birthday suit to wish her a happy birthday. I said, yes, let's go find her. So
Happy birthday to all. Dana says, you told a story one time about your connection with Glenn Campbell. Would you tell it again?
Well, Glenn and I became friends and friendly, though we were never hangout buddies. We were friendly enough to hang for the moment when we found each other. He was a very good friend of producer Jerry Fuller. And Jerry and Glenn were social together. They were competitive in a way. Glenn actually had said to Jerry, I'm going to record that song, Woman, Woman, Have You Got Cheating on Your Mind? And Jerry said, not if I find a singer first. So it was just my fortune that I found Jerry at his office prior to Glenn's recording of the song, which he did do. And we ended up recording it first, because I'm certain that if Glenn had released that as his single, he'd have had the hit with it, and I would not. So thank you very much for making our recording of it the hit.
Alan comes to us from Australia. Did Gary write the words to Woman and Young Girl? And if not, who are the writers?
I did not write them. I wish that I had. I'd be worth $1 gazillion today. Our producer, Jerry Fuller, wrote Young Girl. Woman, Woman was written by a couple. Hello.
Yeah,
hello.
We got these are flying now, yeah.
Written by a couple of fellows from Nashville, Jim Glazer and Jimmy Payne. And they were in a group called Tom Paul and the Glazer Brothers. And they recorded in the earlier to middle 60s, I guess, and they had some success and were a successful country group, but their recording of Woman, Woman was not a success, and that's when Jerry heard it and said, I know that this can be a hit. So when he gave it to me, he said, it went, woman, woman, have you got cheating on your mind, you know.
Gee, I wonder why it didn't make it.
That's maybe a little over-dramatization, but...
Close enough for me. Mary comes to us from Houston, Texas. What song, if any, did you pass on recording that, in hindsight, wow, you wish you would have taken it? Great question, by the way.
Yeah, very, very good question. There are actually several, but names of songs actually slip my mind.
Well, that's
very,
the one
very
thing
easily.
you can't remember. Okay.
There was something by the what was their name?
Never mind about the memoir. We'll work on that as we go.
The Fifth Dimension. They had one.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, and I can't remember which one it was, but I sat in an office with. In fact, I sat in the office with.
That guy. Them.
Mac Davis.
There we go.
You know.
Very cool.
And Mac played me a couple of things, and they became hits, and I had passed on them. And I should not have been the person choosing the songs to begin with. You know, it should have been somebody else that was more objective and knew how to put my voice with the song and the emotion that it all took. You know.
You were just in charge of the outfits.
That's right. Yeah. That's correct.
Steve has a fascinating question, and then we're going to get to one of my favorite questions here at the end. Steve comes to us from Washington, D.C., and Steve knows a little bit about you, obviously, and I've never heard a question like this phrased exactly like this. What is your favorite Civil War campaign?
Steve, you are the Civil War buff, not me. I just happen to have an interest, and I do have a friend who has $1 million collection of things signed by Lincoln and Grant and McClellan and all these people. I don't really have a favorite. I've been to a lot of the sites, you know, where the battles took place, and I read the book April 1965, and you know, I've watched a lot of historical stuff on TV, so I can't say that I have a favorite battle, but I think it's a very interesting period in time, and if any of you go online, you can find Civil War pictures that are unbelievable, because 20 years prior to that, photography had become something that was an important factor, and by the Civil War, photography had been really, really good. So you can see photos that are spectacular, detailed. It'll show you the peaceful side of it. It'll show you the terrible, bloody side of it as well.
Well, Steve also wants to make sure that you come by D.C. soon, and if you haven't, check out the battlefields nearby.
Yes, I've been to a couple of them, and yes, I agree with you. Next time we'll go together, Steve. How's that?
So before I ask the last question from Kurt and Molly, I know this about you, and I think this is fantastic, because I actually have other guests on board that remember the last time you were with us, and I interviewed you, and I asked this question because I love asking people this question. You do have lovely, lovely grandchildren, you are not known as Grandpa. What are you known as to your grandkids?
Well, let me back up just a little bit. Hello, I'm here.
There you go.
When I was 4 years old, or around the time, a child starts to speak and speech is forming and, all that. So my grandfather's name was Linville. When I tried to say Linville, it came out otherwise. And everybody around me, my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my aunt and uncle, they all said, what's he saying? It sounds like he's saying doodle. So that's what my grandfather became through his life until he died at 89 years old, 4 days from his 90th birthday. And when we started having grandkids, my two daughters and my wife said, you are going to be Doodle.
Doodle.
I said, can't I just be Papa G like I have been for a while? I kind of like that one. Nope, you are Doodle. So all the kids call me Doodle, and everybody else calls me Doodle.
Yeah, you're Doodle now.
On the Happy Together tour, Susan Cowsill calls me Doodle.
Doodle, yeah. She might as well be your grandkid at this point, Susan. God love Susan. And I asked that first because Kurt and Molly say, would you be so kind if you were willing to share to tell us a little bit about your grandchildren?
Oh, yeah. What can I tell you? They're beautiful.
Settle in. This could be a long one here. I feel like he's ready now. Doodle is fired up.
I wish I could project them for you. Brandon was the first child, and our daughter, Michaela, who we call Mikey, started out wanting to be a veterinarian, and then, of course, that changed to children. And when she finally made it into medical school, we said, we're going to help you get through school. Whatever needs to be done, we're going to be there to make sure you get through. So she had to study 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. So when Brandon was born, we took him as our own child. Not that she wasn't there, she was. But when he woke up at 6 a.m., it was my face he was looking at. It was
Doodle.
me changing the diaper. It was me taking him out and finding him food. And
that's a good Doodle.
That's a good Doodle, you bet. So he and I bonded through the first 2 years of his life incredibly. And
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and she was able to establish herself. She's now, how do I put it? She's with a corporation, and she's the medical director of 5 medical locations.
Wow.
And she's doing very, very well. Thank you. And she's given us 3 other grandchildren. Bentley, who we call Petunia, she's a beautiful child, but has a mind of her own. I'm telling you, she is a challenge, this one. Her little sister, her name is Brooklyn. We call her Poppy or Boo-Boo or whatever comes along. I don't know. And she's just a precious little thing, and physically they're just beautiful, beautiful children. And she's a very loving, so is Petunia, but she's very in your face about stuff, And Poppy is not. She's very easygoing and all that. And we now have a little 2-year-old that is just gorgeous as well, belonging to our younger daughter. Mm-hmm. And all we can say is God is good to us, having blessed us with wonderful children that are smart. I got to say, all the girls in my family are far smarter than I am, but they can't sing like I do.
Hi. I have found that by and large, women tend to be smarter than me, so I tend not to challenge any of that. Even at 2, I'm like, yes, ma'am. Before we let you go, tell us a little bit about what it's like to come back on the Flower Power Cruise.
It's always fantastic. I mean, what else can you say? It's amazing, the thing they put together. I looked at Lori just yesterday and said, how does anybody do a scheduling on this cruise? I mean, you see stuff from 7:15, all the way to, and I joined them at 12:15 last night, and I thought I was going to collapse because I'd been up since 6 a.m. But it's a wonderful thing to come back to this cruise, and the fans are so loving and caring and warm and outgoing, but they're respectful, and we enjoy that we're able to be cruisers as well. So we'll be on for the rest of the cruise. If we see you on deck, say hello. We're here for that reason, and we love being here, so thank you for inviting us. And I want to say thanks to all my fans for being there all these years. I'm going to be there for you as long as I can.
I love it. My friends and family, do me a favor. Spending all this time regaling us with all these stories. Put your hands together for Doodle!